Well, hello and welcome to the Eagle and Child podcast. It is so good to have you with us today. I am super excited and very honored to be talking with my next guest. His name is Pastor Landon MacDonald. He is a pastor in Phoenix, Arizona, but grew up in Chicago and pastored there for many years as well. He's got a degree in theology, just a brilliant mind for biblical studies and biblical theology. He has an incredible YouTube channel, I think called Pastor Landon. He'll correct me in a moment if that's not correct, but with just amazing content. You have to check out this ministry, just resourcing the local church everywhere. And today he's going to be talking to us about the Prince of Preachers, Charles Haddon Spurgeon. So welcome, Pastor Landon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I think it's really fun. And I will certainly, I was telling you before we started rolling that I certainly will count myself honored to be in the list of guests that you have had on this podcast. My only hope is that you can do an angry Gabe Finocchio episode where
absolutely, that's not hard.
Try to upset him. Just try to upset him about Catholicism for a few minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I can definitely do that. And if you can make a cameo appearance in that episode just as a mediator, that would be fantastic.
Yes.
Yes. And I had failed to mention in the introduction, but Pastor Landon is also part of the faculty at Theos University and Theos Seminary. Is that right?
That is right. That is right. I was at a music festival in California and Nathan called me, Nathan Finocchio, and he doesn't call very often, even when you call him. So I was like,
you just have to be on your deathbed to get a call from Nathan. Yeah.
If I was on my deathbed, Nathan would show up around Jesus and Lazarus territory. He would certainly make it, but not in the right time period.
Yes.
And he called me and asked me to be a part of it. So I've been a part of it for 2 years now, since basically the beginning. It's been awesome to be a part of, watch it grow. I believe in what they're doing. I firmly and strongly believe in the releasing of the monetization of Christian content at the potential future expense of what it is. We all have favorite TV shows that became awful because they couldn't stay on the air unless they changed the original writers or appealed to a larger audience or whatever is the artistic critique. And what they are doing at the expense of money that they could make for the blessing and equipping of people is really something. It's really something. And if Jesus doesn't come back, it will have generational impact. And for that, I am honored to be a part.
Oh, awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about some of your subjects that you've taught there, some of the classes that people can sort of check out if they're subscribed?
They give me all the ones that no one wants to do. So I did Minor Prophets and I did Leviticus.
Wow.
Which was my idea, but I am obsessed with that book and I couldn't stop reading it for a hot minute. And I've done Psalms, and I'm like their Bible guy. So I grew up Baptist, so pray for me and pray in tongues over me. And I did like a sexual purity one, and I was like, of all. I get asked to do that constantly. I don't understand why. I've gotten asked to teach on that in so many places. It's because the people never want to do it themselves. They're like,
but you also do it so well. I've watched your content on that. The way that you set it out is just perfect. So I can see why many people would want it.
When you've experienced an incredible amount of God's grace in that area, it's really exciting to teach people that well, I don't want to talk about that right now, but whenever I get invited places, they're always like, talk about sex or money.
Yeah, nice. Two good topics to be invited for. But today we are not talking about that. Might creep into our Charles Spurgeon topic, but can you tell us a little bit about this guy, the Prince of Preachers, C.H. Spurgeon? He's quoted everywhere. I know, especially in Baptist circles, he's one of the heroes, especially of the last couple of centuries. So could you tell us a little bit about his background, his spiritual formation, and how he sort of emerged on the scene as a voice in the Christian church?
Absolutely. Spurgeon is an icon in conservative, reformed, a lot of circles. And I think that as God raises up this next generation of people that is less concerned about those walls than ever before, I think that he will become more of an icon in more circles, and for good reason. He is called the Prince of Preachers. He is probably the greatest preacher of all time. I mean, I haven't read sermons from all of the church fathers, but he certainly is the person that I've seen the most sermons from. He's like 1800s guy. If you're like way off the grid and you don't know anything about him, let me just get you up to speed on that front for anybody who's listening. He was born in 1834. He was baptized as an infant. So all you Catholics out there, you got one on him with that. He read a lot as a child. He was really into like Pilgrim's Progress was apparently this big book for him when he was 10 years old. Also, when he was 10, there's this crazy story. This pastor, Richard Nill, came to his town, ended up connecting with Charles' family at church. Charles is 10 years old. Wow. And he says that he wants to talk with him more. So however that worked in the 1800s, they met up at the church or whatever they did. They ended up connecting again. They ended up praying as a family. And this pastor took Charles on his knee when he was 10. And he said, he was praying over this kid. And he said, you know, you are going to preach to great multitudes.
Wow. Amazing.
And that proved true. He preached at what I understand was the greatest, not the greatest, the largest church in the history of England. Not that necessarily large churches are big, but certainly in times and in cultures where people are not walking with God, it is an indicator of a lot.
Totally.
He's like a he loves the Puritans. He loves Calvin. He loves Augustine, as everyone does. And John Owen would kind of be like probably his Mount Rushmore. He got saved. He has like a classic Reformed saved story. He was going to a bunch of churches when he was a teenager, wasn't into it, went to a church where he has described the preacher as awful. And he's actually more negative even than that. He just said he was a bad preacher. And during the sermon, the guy was a shoemaker. Praise God for that guy. He was making shoes all week and preaching for free. And that guy led Charles Spurgeon to faith.
Amazing. That's cool.
So anyone out there who thinks they're not that good at preaching, you know, think about that shoemaker guy. I got a C in preaching class. And the preacher said, "Look to me." He quoted scripture. He said, "Look to me and be saved, all the ends of the earth." And Spurgeon said he got saved at that moment. And apparently they either sung like an old hymn called Celestial City that day, or it was a part of it when he told the story later. And the words from that hymn are on his tombstone. So it's clearly, it was a really big deal for him. That's kind of like where he's at and where he comes from and that kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And how did he sort of get into ministry? Like, where did that sort of preaching, I know he had that prophetic word over him as he was like 10 years old, but how did he actually sort of make his way into that scene?
He was just like your classic, the second he got saved, immediately started doing ministry. He was a lead pastor of a church when he was 18 years old.
Oh my gosh, no way.
And it's, when you read like a biography of his, it's crazy. It's like, I think he got saved when he was 16. And by the time he was 18, he was leading a church. And most people would think that was insane. Yeah. You could even make the argument from some of the letters of Paul that that's too fast. Yeah. Even still, you can't argue with the results.
Totally. God does what he wants to do. Anoints who he wants to anoint.
Let no one look down on you because of your youth.
Amen. Come on. I love that. Wow. So can you tell us a little bit about, say then, his ministry journey, some of the big events in his ministry, also like maybe some of the big works? I know he had so many sermons that were published and so many quotes that we quote today. But what are some big works and some big events in his ministry journey?
Absolutely. So his biggest thing was his preaching. He preached 2,200 sermons.
Wow.
And they are actually all online for free. Amazing. Every single one of them. There's a website called archive.spurgeon.org, and you can actually sort them by passage. So whoever
Amazing.
did that website has done a great service to people. For years,
Totally.
I would go and just read a Spurgeon sermon on whatever I was preaching on. So the interesting thing about that was, he's like a preacher guy. He preaches all these sermons, but this is right around the time that they're starting to, the globalization is at its very earliest things. Things is a terrible word. Great communication. It's at its very, very earliest precipice of existing. And so they were actually wiring his sermons across the Atlantic. There were lots and lots of people who were receiving them by mail. It was like a foreshadowing of fill in the blank of your favorite preacher that a ton of people watch, regardless of how many people actually go to the church. That is such a remarkable thing about his life. That, because we always think, well, no one was listening to anyone else until 1998, but that's not true. People were weekly receiving via mail Charles Spurgeon's sermons in the middle of the 1800s.
Crazy.
And
that's insane.
It is, and that shows the demand for them.
Yeah.
He was a really big writer. There's an interesting anecdote from one of the biographies of him, which I can't remember which one it's in, but the interesting anecdote is this: he was probably one of the most gifted orators, and he was like, I'm also going to write. He was talking to a mentor, and his mentor told him, you shouldn't write because most people are either good at speaking or writing, and rarely is someone good at both. And he chose to disregard that, and we are blessed for it.
Absolutely. Thank God he did.
Yeah. He wrote a 3-volume on Psalms, which is my favorite of his. It's called The Treasury of David. It contains a full...
I think I have it right here.
You do?
I have at least
incredible.
2. The Treasury of David.
That's it. That's the
How's that
one.
for a show and tell? Actually, I have all 3. 2.
Is that one's in 3? Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the ones I've seen are in 3. It's really something. He does in it. If you're listening and you've never read it or used it, it's a great resource. And there's so many printings of it that you can get it for pretty cheap. I would advise you to get a paper copy. It is most commentaries are great, and they are textual commentaries. And it is a person that is much smarter than me giving textual comments on Hebrew and Greek and helping you not be an idiot. That's what most commentators are for. Spurgeon's Treasury of David is not like that. It is a preaching commentary. He's preaching to you in it. So he's not going to tell you what the Hebrew word means always. He is going to, but it's structured though. It's structured, and he structures them out. And then at the end, he has a thing called quaint sayings, and he has a ton of sayings about that psalm from other people that he has read. And so it's an amazing place to get content, because you can get like 15 different people's take on a verse right from there. And
so good.
Yeah, there's like a big one called Lectures to My Students that is good. The one that I brought with me is called Finding Peace in Life's Storms.
Awesome. That's cool. I haven't read that.
He did Saved in Hope, and he did a whole chapter. He's known for doing like ludicrous amounts of content on the smallest amount of biblical content. So awesome. I have seen 50-minute sermons on 3 words from the text, and he doesn't stray from the text. And he does a 30 or 40 page chapter in Finding Peace in Life's Storms on the anchor that holds within the veil. And it's really something. I would highly encourage anyone who's listening to check it out.
Absolutely. Especially preachers. If you want a preacher to inspire you around the art of preaching, like who better to go to than Charles Spurgeon? That's awesome.
That's right.
Very cool, Pastor Landon. So just moving on from there, those big events and big works that he's sort of been into, could you tell us a little bit about then, how does his life and his ministry sort of speak to us in our sort of cultural setting today? Is there anything that really stands out to you that you think And I know you said in the beginning that he sort of will speak even into the future. Why do you think that is, and how do you think he speaks to our culture today?
Yeah, I think powerful content is powerful content, and I think it lives on regardless of who wrote it or what it's for. If it's powerful, it's going to live on. We see that in film, we see that in music. 1972, everybody bought an equivalent amount of David Bowie and Carole King records, and no one even knows who Carole King is now, because
Wow.
rightly or wrongly, history. And I like Carole King, so don't email me about that. But that's history proves what is powerful, and that's the same in Christianity. And people have decided, I think rightly, that this content needs to live on. I think obviously he's impacted a ton in simple, clear, textual preaching.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone in the circles I run in that more people have read on that subject, in terms of, he doesn't really teach about preaching. They just listen to him, or read him rather do it. That is, I would say, the main way. Secondarily to that, I think he's one of those church fathers that you read and you just think, man, you must have had no hobbies.
Yeah, his productivity was
anything.
crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
insane.
You didn't do anything. You just woke up,
Yeah.
got on your horse, probably wrote 6,000 to 8,000 words of incredible content, drank some whiskey, and went to bed.
Smoked a cigar. He was famous for smoking cigars, wasn't he?
He was. I've got a great anecdote about that later. You're going to love it.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, awesome. And I love how you mentioned that he just pumped out content, sort of like you. You have so much content, and so much great content getting out there. It's not trash in any way. But the same with Spurgeon. It's like, where does this guy get the energy to just like keep going? But yeah, no, I love that. That's incredible. And yeah, again, like just so inspiring for preachers, great quotes. And I think that transitions us well into the next sort of space. So do you have any particular quotes that you would say have impacted you, or that you just know are just prolific quotes that Spurgeon has put out there that just people for generations since have really connected with?
I do. I've got my top 5. Is that too
Top
many?
5. Awesome. Yeah.
Is that too many? How
No, that's great. That's
okay.
great.
You tell me if I'm talking too much. It will not bother me. So I actually did this on a YouTube video.
Awesome.
And coming in at number 5 on Psalm 23, Charles Spurgeon said, "What condescension is this, that the infinite Lord assumes towards his people the office and character of a shepherd?"
Wow. Beautiful.
Coming in at number 4 on Colossians 1:12 and 13, he said, "This passage is a mine of riches. I can anticipate the difficulty in preaching and the regret in concluding we shall experience this evening, because we won't be able to dig out all the gold which lies in this precious vein. We lack the power to grasp and the time to expatiate the volume of truths which is here condensed into a few short sentences." And then he preached on those 2 verses for 50 minutes and said, "I don't have enough time."
Amazing.
Yeah. Coming in at number 3 on Galatians 6:8. This one's very simple, but he said, Galatians 6:8, he shall reap what the Spirit really is and what the Spirit really generates, life everlasting, which in the space that I grew up in wouldn't be a typical comment on that passage, which would probably more be focused on effort, which is a fine focus for that passage and for that verse. I won't make you comment in between each one. I'll just do the last 2.
Yeah, no worries.
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
On Luke 8, what did I write? Oh, on October 22nd, 1885, he preached an entire sermon on Luke 18:1, and he said, "Get on the knees of your soul."
Oh. Wow.
And then my favorite Spurgeon quote ever is from Psalm 150. It's at the very end of The Treasury of David. So he's written 3 volumes, a couple thousand so pages, 100,000 words. I don't know, probably. And he says this, Psalm 150, we have now reached the last summit of the mountain chain of Psalms. It rises high into the clear azure, and its brow is bathed in the sunlight of the eternal world of worship. It is a rapture.
Beautiful. Oh, wow. I just love the way he articulates his thoughts and the way he phrases it. Just his eloquence is just brilliant, isn't it? It's just beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Imagine having a piece of paper and a pen and writing that sentence.
Yes. Imagine. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, he was incredible. Some great quotes there. Pastor Landon, do you have any fun facts or fun stories? We always like to finish up with, just some crazy things that might have happened to them or some interesting things. Do you have any fun stories that you could share with us about Charles Haddon Spurgeon?
The legend. I do.
Legend.
His library had 30,000 books in it.
Oh my gosh, how?
I don't even know how that's possible.
That's amazing.
I mean, your library looks huge, but what is it? Probably 1,000?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. I really don't know. And it's just filled with book donations. So I don't always know the quality of the books that are in this library at church.
Well, that's the right way to do it. Whenever people start a record collection, I'm like, just go to the record store, they'll have boxes of records no one wants. Buy those, put them on your shelves, and then fill in the records you do want as you get them. And maybe you'll find a gem for 10 cents.
Brilliant. And how many records do you have? Because your record collection is just inspiring. It's a sight to behold.
Yeah, I think many people who love me and love listening to me talk would not want to anymore if they knew how much time, energy, and money on my record collection. But I started collecting in 2005, and it's about 1,200 right now. Awesome. It's been fun. Yeah. My son's getting into it. My son is 6. He got his first record. He got a 7-inch, and he's like, Dad, I can't put this with your records. I have to have my own collection.
Yes, of course he does. Was it some VeggieTales record? What did he get?
No, I'm friends with the record store owner down the street from my house, and he was so sweet. He let him pick out a couple. I can't even remember what it was. But we'll make sure that we get him something really good for the first one he chooses.
Yes, totally.
Can't
be embarrassing.
Wings, something really classic like that.
Something cool. I think the first CD I ever bought was a Backstreet Boys CD, which is it's shameful, really.
Which one, Millennium?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It really was a Backstreet Boys or NSYNC world back then.
Totally.
All right.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but back to things that matter. So we had 30,000 books in his library, and then I've got one interesting one and one funny one. I'll do the interesting one first. He's the only church father I know. I don't even know if people who like church fathers would call him a church father. They'd probably be like, he's way too late in the game. Either way, I would consider him in that lineage. He's the only one that I know that has a work that's dedicated just to his wife. So there's actually an entire book that is exclusively about Charles Spurgeon's wife. And she was really something. She was amazing. There is a passage in one of the biographies of Spurgeon that talks about when he was going through absolutely excruciating physical pain. And he had to pray to God, I literally can't deal with that level of pain any more time. And he said that God never put him to that level again. And his wife was always there by his side, which is not a good anecdote about her because it sounds like that was a bad example of what I was talking about. Anyways, you should check out this book about her. She really was somebody. She was really, really something.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on the cigar thing, there's this my favorite Spurgeon anecdote is this one, which is that it was way back in the day when people would sit on stage while their guest preacher was preaching.
Yep.
And I think some churches still do that. My college did that for conferences. And so there's the guy up front and there's just a bunch of guys behind there listening. which would not be fun because everyone is watching you listen to a sermon.
Yeah.
And the guy that was preaching it, so it's a guest, and Spurgeon sitting behind him. And the guy gives an example of smoking cigars as sin. And he says that this is a sinful decision to make. Now, everybody in his congregation presumably knows that he smokes cigars often. And so he got up to close the service and he said, now we all know that what to one man is sin, another man can enjoy to the glory of God. And I fully intend to enjoy a cigar to the glory of God before I go to bed.
So savage. Boom.
Yeah. Just
I love
crushes
that.
the guy. Crushes the guy in his own church.
Crazy. I think he got a bit of backlash for that, didn't he? I think they were just like, yeah.
Yeah. The backlash waves were way slower back then. So,
Yeah.
it takes to get around the mix. Not like now. That one girl, I can't remember who, she tweeted something, and by the time she got off the plane, she was trending on Twitter and lost her job.
No. I don't know who that is.
The world is just a horrible place.
It's psycho, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a cesspool, really.
It is. It is.
The internet is a cesspool. No, that's awesome. Do you have anything else that you want to tell us about Charles Spurgeon? Is there any gold that you want to leave us with, or any thoughts that you've had, any ways that he's impacted your life?
I think the best way to jump in, if people are watching this and they want to jump in, is to go to archive.spurgeon.org and just read a sermon on a passage that you really like. It can be a bit intimidating to get like 1,000-page Psalms commentary, and you're not going to read that cover to cover unless you're an angel. And so, that's what I would say about that.
Awesome. Yeah, great place to start. Thank you, Pastor Landon. If people want to follow your ministry and find some of your resources online, where can they find those things?
I am on Instagram. I am Landon MacDonald. And I do content, I'm starting to do some swipe content there to bless people. I'm on YouTube. You can just type in Pastor Landon, and I love doing it. I would love to bless anybody. I've got some written content that I love to give away to people who want to use it for ministry. So you send me an email. My email is under all my YouTube videos. And just don't do what many churches did during COVID, which is download it, rip it, upload it during your service, and post it back on YouTube, because then YouTube will tell me that my video got. So please just don't do that, because I don't want to have to try to take it down. I don't want to have that crisis of conscience anymore.
Yes, absolutely. No, awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today, Pastor Landon. What a great episode, and a great man to study, C.H. Spurgeon. We will see you guys who are watching next time on the Eagle and Child podcast. Thanks, Pastor Landon.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Eagle and Child podcast. That's all from us for today. If you want to support us, you can like, subscribe, or drop us a review. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram @Eagle and Child Podcast. We'll catch you next time. Much love.